Hey folks, John with Complete Technology Solutions, your friend in the computer business. All right guys, it is time for the head-to-head. This might surprise you a little bit. I actually was pretty impressed by a couple of these little tests we did. Check these out. All right guys, there's zero doubt that just burnt right into that platform.
So this is, for those who don't know, Stronghold Legend.
Time to make a pie. Here we go. What I wanted to do from the first time I opened up that VIC-20 and started banging out programs. All right, guys, back with you. So I wanted to do this in more of a real world kind of experience. And if you guys saw that last video on just the Byrna, and in case you missed it, I'll shoot a link up here. There were a lot of questions, and foremost on the questions were, will the PepperBalls rupture at certain ranges and based on the clothing? So I started doing a little bit of statistical digging, and I know that just sounds wonderful and fun. But from the FBI's own statistics, most encounters when you have a firearm involved happen between 3 and 5 meters. So you're talking between 9 and 15 feet. So the idea is you're never going to be firing these things, at least hopefully, at 30 to 40 feet away at a target that's moving. And you're certainly not going to be trying to hit somebody 100 feet away with it. The idea is these are like real short distance self-protection devices. So what we're going to do is I want to test this against a couple different things. I want to test against hard objects at a little more distance. I want to test accuracy at about 30 feet. Now that could be important because theoretically, if you did have to fire one of these at 30 feet, you're going to aim for a hard source, center mass, head, somewhere where it's going to rupture. And guaranteed to be ruptured. Other than that, if you're firing the solid rounds, well, for that, you're obviously going to want to hit somewhere that's not well padded. So, but all right, for this test, I got a couple different items for you too. Now, I remember we talked about the small CO2 cartridges that came with the Byrna, and we found that a little bit annoying because these, for the salt supply, you can literally go down and pick up at Walmart. These you had to buy from them. But what I discovered was, and by the way, thank you to one of the viewers for pointing this out. Right after I found it, I saw this come through. These are the small little 8-gram cartridges for seltzer, club soda, and carbonated water. These work just fine. They're the exact same cartridges as these, same fill, same size, and they will work in the Byrna. By the way, I will put links to all of this down in the description down there. So that's what we're going to go ahead and use. Now, this is the one that's left from the original Byrna. We'll have that in there. Then we'll test a few of these just to make sure we're getting the same velocities. The next thing, I'm going to test a couple different rounds on this. Now, you know that these come with the solid plastic ones. They're pretty light. They don't really, they have a lot of impact. Obviously, you saw what happened to that safe we hit, and it just dented the snot out of it at about 30 feet. But I also wanted to be able to test the rupturing aspect without having to use the PepperBalls or to actually fire at anybody, because that's just kind of mean. So what I got is I picked up a package of these inert PepperBalls. These are great for testing. They have that same talcum powder inside. I will put a link for all of this too down there in the description. This is what we're going to test the rupture for distance and accuracy. We're going to see if it makes any difference. The next thing I picked up, now these are a little heavier duty, guys. These are solid rubber, 68 caliber, steel core balls. These probably weigh, I'd say, a gram or two more than the standard ones that came in this for the solids, but they should have a lot of impact. And obviously they'd be reusable unless you hit something that cuts them or something. So, all right, so here's the plan. We're going to take the entire stage as usual, because we don't want to do this in the building here, and we're going to go out back of the flea market. What I want to do is I'm going to set up a few targets. We're going to shoot some foam. We're going to let it hit the foam and see if the foam will rupture these. We're going to shoot a couple objects to see what kind of accuracy we're getting and impact. And then we're going to check and see what kind of distance we're getting any accuracy at all on both of them. So hang tight one sec. I'm going to reposition, take all this outside, and we'll be right back. All right, guys. At this point, from right where I'm standing to the camera, and more importantly to the side of this dumpster, we're looking at about 35 feet from the camera to the actual point of impact on the dumpster. Now, this is twice the distance that the maximum would be by FBI statistics for close encounters when you have a firearm. So this is the distance we're going to test at. The first thing I want to test is accuracy. So I got a couple little objects down here you might recognize. This is from a PC, it's just a cooling fan, and that's just a little plastic house. So what I want to do is we're going to test the first series using the solid rounds that we picked up. So let me get one of these loaded up and I'll be right back with you. All right guys, so here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, let's test the salt supply first. Now as a reminder on how to load the salt supply, we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop the magazine out. And this magazine actually still has the PepperBall. By the way, remember what we talked about with the salt supply dropping the balls? Well, there was a prime example of it right there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to load the salt supply up with these solid core balls, all right? So let's go ahead and get out 7 of these. And as you can see, guys, I'm doing this with you. I have no idea what we're about to find. We're going to find out together. All right, those are really, really hard, and they are rubber, you can tell, all right? So let's grab our magazine, and it loads up just like the Byrna, right in there. And as you can see, it's got a spring release right here, so you pop all your rounds in, and then you want to release that. Now, you want to do that slowly, because if you don't, just like the Byrna, if you depress that little lever on the top, you will trigger all your rounds at once. You don't want to do that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pop it in. And it's now, these are now chambered up in here, all right? The next thing we need to do is we need to put in our cartridge, okay? So you spin this, twist off, pull the cylinder. You get your CO2 cartridge, and you insert it nozzle down into the weapon. You place this back on and screw it in place. All right, at this point, we are currently on safe, all right? At this point, it's ready to fire just like the Byrna is. Now, I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead and just to save a little bit of time here, I'm gonna go ahead and load up the Byrna, all right? So, we'll drop the magazine. You'll see it's actually empty, by the way. People were commenting on that little ball. That's actually not a ball. All that does is tells you on the side of the magazine how many rounds you have left in the mag. So, all right, let's go ahead and load this one up, and this holds 5 of the solid rounds. There we go. They just happen to be the same color. You got to love that. All right. 4 and 5. Incidentally, somebody else had asked about these. These are 68 caliber, and yes, these will fire paintballs. I don't know that I would, because that's really not what these are for, but you could fire paintballs if you were so inclined. So, all right. So we'll go ahead and load this magazine. Now, this one is a little more complicated, remember. Remember on the salt supply, you were able to just unscrew the front. Now, in order to put the cartridge in, what you want to do is take your other magazine. You want to insert this cotter pin in here, and you want to screw this little piece out. Now, once it gets here and it's loose, you can actually do it by hand. It's very important, guys, you do not try to do this when there's pressure on that cartridge, all right? All right, let's take our cartridge. Now, this is the Byrna branded one, and we're going to pop it in. And we're going to screw this down. Keeping in mind that this will not charge or puncture the cylinder until we pull that trigger the first time. All right, got that in. Like I said, this is really the only annoyance so far that I've actually found with the Byrna right there. All right, so let's commence with some testing, shall we? What we're going to do is first let's test the salt supply. So let's take this over here, and I'm going to reposition, and we're going to fire down there at the cool things on the dumpster. Here we go. So we're going to start with the salt supply, okay? Now, there is one thing that's a little bit different about the salt supply than the Byrna, and we'll get to that here in 1 second. This has to actually be on fire in order to puncture the cartridge on the salt supply. So you put it on fire. The first time you pull this, it's going to puncture the cylinder. Hear that? And now it's ready to fire. So what we're going to do is we're going to take aim. As you can see, guys, that is incredibly accurate. We're going to see if we can hit a couple more things right down there in the dumpster. There you go. 7 rounds. All right, so let me reposition the targets, and we're going to swap out, and we're going to fire up the Byrna. Here we go. All right, guys, and now we're going to go with the Byrna. Now remember, with the Byrna, you can pull the trigger the first time on fire, but you're going to fire a round downrange at half the velocity. Or if you put it on safety, now pull, and you're charged and ready to go. All right, down to fire. And here we go. Same targets. Excuse my aim, guys. You could probably tell I'm kind of cockeyed. I want the camera to see what we're aiming at, so. Go for that green thing up on top. Guys, that is deadly accurate. Man, that thing is dead on accurate, guys. It is hitting right where I am putting it. I wanted to hit the metal a couple times to see if it would dent it. So I'm gonna take a look and see what it actually did. Then we're gonna set up our next test, which is the burst test. I wanna see how these burst when they hit. Be right back. All right, guys, this is the burst test for the salt supply. Let's see what we get. I'd call that some bursts. This is the burst test on the Byrna. All right, guys, so we're gonna move into the building for the rest of this test. It is really freaking hot outside. I think it's a little over 90 degrees right now. And my camera, this SV1, kept shutting down. So I may have lost a little bit of footage from the tests, but both weapons fired accurately at 30 to 35 feet. Both weapons were able to rupture the can, I mean, without a problem. In fact, in both cases, it went completely through the can and out the other side, so it just blew them up. So both were deadly accurate. Now, the next thing I want to test, you guys are familiar with this big range here. Now, I want to show you. One of the questions we got most often was, will this rupture on a coat or any kind of heavy clothing? So here's what I've got. This is some of that very mushy packing foam that they use for computers, all right? This is not the stiff stuff. This would emulate having a coat on top of flesh. So my question is, will the inert rounds puncture this or break on this at the 35-foot range? That's what we're gonna test. So let me get this lined up. We're gonna give it a shot. All right, guys, so here's what we're gonna do. I wanna keep this test completely fair. And by fair, I mean the Byrna and the salt supply both have brand new cartridges installed. They both have brand new rounds installed. Now I wanna show these to you guys. These are the inert rounds that I picked up. They are a lot smoother than the rubber balls were. A whole lot smoother, you can see that. And you can actually see the powder in them. That top is not white, it's clear. So to give you an idea what's in there, all right? This is what we're gonna be firing. And to keep it completely fair, there were 5 of these in each one of those containers, each one of these. Each one is gonna get 5 shots at this, and then we're gonna take 5 shots at something else. Let's start out with our salt supply, shall we? All right, so we have a new round in. We're gonna put it on fire. This is downrange. We're gonna pull the trigger to charge it, and we're gonna take our shots at it. Let's see if we can get a rupture, shall we? Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. First 2 shots, as you can see, both of them actually ruptured down there. So let me go down and take a look at what we've got. I don't know if it's gonna pick up for you guys, but back on the wall, there's 2 dots on her right arm. See that? Those dots are because it went completely through this foam. So it did rupture because it went through the padding and hit the object on the other side. Now, that could be a little bit of foreshadowing about what you're gonna see if you fire this in the field and someone's wearing a shirt or a coat. It's gonna kind of ignore that if it hits a solid object underneath it. Now, of course, if you're firing in a super thick winter coat, it may not rupture. I unfortunately don't have one to test with, but this works. By the way, the smell, I'm gonna put a link to these test rounds down there in the description. They smell like baby powder, like really like baby powder. It's crazy. All right, you know what? Byrna's gonna get a better test. We're gonna fold this in half. I'm gonna see if this will go through 2 layers of this and still rupture. I bet you it will. Give me a second. All right, guys, so here's what we've got. You'll notice I have the target set up down there. I've actually folded that in half, all right? So let's go ahead and charge the Byrna. And it's ready to go. And let's see if we can hit it. Of course, we know it's gonna hit it. And that actually sounded like it went all the way through, guys. I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna look, though. I'm pretty sure everybody on this video can see that cloud that's forming down there. Every one of those shots went through that. That's 2.5 layers of that foam and hitting the solid object on the other side. So let me pull it back up here. Hold on one second. don't know if you can see it, guys. Bam, 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 bam. So at that range, it went through every single time, completely through, out the other side, and hit that wall. This is going to rupture if you're within this range of a target. And I would be willing to say that if they're a little bit closer, remember statistically, you're talking 3 to 5 meters. That is further than that. And it's going to definitely rupture. Pretty cool, right? All right, so I am going to do one more test with the Byrna just because I always wanted to. I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, so for our next test, you know, my mom always said I'd get ahead in life. Let's shoot the head, shall we? What I want to do is put it all the way down there. We're going to use some more of those inert rounds, and I want to see if A, we know it's going to puncture, that's foam. But B, how far will it puncture? Will it destroy it? And will it rupture? Will it actually rupture? That's what we're curious about. So let me put this down here. And guys, as I'm loading this up, I want you to know, for this test, I am not going to change the cartridge in the Byrna. So we have 5 rounds fired through on the Byrna at full velocity, and you saw what those did. So let's see what this does after 5 rounds have been fired through the Byrna. And let's see what she does, shall we? Back on fire, and away we go. Well, I don't think there's a question of the accuracy, do you? All right, let me go down here and pull this. Let's take a look and see what we got. All right, guys, so check this out. Here's our head. When it was laying down, this is actually one of the molding things, we'll ignore that. When it was laying down on its side, you can actually see where the ball punctured completely into the head on both sides. It is covered in that white powder. I don't know if you could see that. And up here, that's not a pleasant hit. If you take that hit, I don't care who you are, you're going down. This is where I grazed the top of the skull. You can see that. Pretty crazy, right? All right, so let me tell you what. Let me get back to my stage. I want to get all this together, and I did discover something kind of interesting about one of these weapons that you're going to want to know. Let me get back in here, and we'll do a wrap-up. That was fun, guys. I'm not going to lie. I very much enjoyed that. That was thrilling. Look, before I tell you anything else, I got to tell you, I don't think you could go wrong with either one of these. I just don't. I mean, they're both fun. They fire nice. They're wonderful. They are. Now, that being said, during the testing phases, there's 2 things I discovered. The first is those rubber balls. The salt supply cooperated with the rubber balls a little bit more. On the Byrna, the rubber balls had a little bit of friction to them. So when you would load them, occasionally you'd have to pull the trigger twice to get it to fire. Don't use the rubber balls. When I used it on the standard inert or any of the plastic balls or even paint balls, they fired normally. But when you fire it with those rubber ones, it did tend to bind up. That's no big deal because nobody's going to load this thing down with practice rubber balls. You're going to load it up with the pepper spray. Now, this is one that is kind of important. On the salt supply, when I loaded in the next cartridge, the CO2 cartridge, as soon as I pulled the trigger to puncture it, I'm going to show Stumpy this. When I pulled the trigger to puncture this valve started leaking and it was making a hissing sound. Now, it did not completely depressurize. It went down maybe 5 or 10 seconds, then stopped, and I was still able to get the shot you saw fire out there at the head. So it didn't disable the weapon, but I'm going to be back in touch with him to find out what that's about. It may just be something like a simple adjustment on this grub screw. I'm not sure yet. But, you know, until I know, I don't fiddle with it until I know for sure, so I'm going to check that. Now, final conclusions. Once again, guys, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with either one of these. Personally, I will be carrying the Byrna. From this day forward, this is going to be my standard sidearm when I walk around. They've got a great range of accessories also. And once again, I'm going to link everything down here in the description so you can see it. Hopefully, in the future here, I'll be able to carry some of these at the flea market. So you'll be able to come up and check them out live also. So pretty cool, right? Well, thanks for watching, guys. I know that parts of this video might have got a little bit butchered. That's all about the heat outside and what it did to my poor camera. Fortunately, it did survive to get us this far. That's a good thing. At least I hope so. When I get to editing, we'll find out. But I'm 100% sure you will not be dissatisfied with either one of these. Absolutely. By the way, we have another contender. I got contacted by PepperBall, and they produce what's called the PepperBall TCP. I'm going to see if I can get one of those in here to the test. We'll head-to-head 3 of them, and this time we'll do it in cooler temperatures so I don't cook my camera. Have a fantastic week, guys. A great weekend. If you're in the area, stop by and see me. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.